on live. We are already on live on Facebook and Instagram at the same, not Instagram, sorry, on YouTube at the same.
Great.
And this thing streams for both places. I just have to uh, put into public so everybody can see. That's it. So September 27, it's a big Sunday, and I have the honor to receive here this wonderful professor, great soloist, great friend, and bass player after all, above all, bass player, Jeff Bradetich. Welcome, Jeff.
Hi, Sonia. Love to be with you here. It's great to see you again.
Yeah, good to see you too. It's been a while. I think since 4 years or so, because I don't think we met on this last beat, have we?
Yeah, no, I don't think so.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's been, we kind of got used to see each other every other year, but it's.
I know, because I came down, you had me come down a couple times, and then, of course, you're coming up here, and I remember very well when you stayed those 6 months or 8 months and studied here.
Yeah, 6 months. Yeah, 6 months.
That was,
And this, I had this fellowship for
I remember.
research in 6
We were good
months.
fast.
Yeah, it went very fast, yeah. And I didn't realize how fast it would be because, 6 months until you find a place to live and got your bills, getting to the right address and all that stuff, and it's about time to wrap up everything and go back home. It was very, very good. And it was the time you were finishing your book.
Mhm.
It was nice that we could chat about this.
That's right. We talked about it quite a bit. So I remember.
It was nice. And Juan Pablo is there. Juan Pablo Navarro.
Oh, Juan Pablo. Good to see you. Good to hear from you.
Yeah, bass players are gonna start now, getting on. And well, tell me, the main thing of this chat here every day is to help people to stay home during quarantine. And I talk to performers every day, and the main idea is to share how we're coping with this whole thing. It's harder for some people, it's easier for some others. And how is it going for you?
It comes at an interesting time in my career because I'm starting to not perform as much and that type of thing. So this is kind of given me a period of time free where I can just practice a little bit, and I actually have 3 commissions going right now and able to work on that whole aspect of bringing new music, more music to the bass, which we desperately need. And so I find that process very interesting, and the nice thing is not being so pressed for time and so rushed and hurried to get it out there and perform it right away, but to have time to absorb it. I've also used the COVID time here, especially over the summer when things were very slow, to go back through some of my old recordings and put out on YouTube now the Block Shalomo, and today or tomorrow we'll put out the Brahms second cello sonata, which is very rarely done, but it's one of my favorite pieces, and so that'll be coming out soon. So I had time to do some of these older projects. I've edited 13 different pieces of music that will be available soon for sheet music of beautiful pieces that I've always thought were pretty well on the bass.
Great.
So I had to put it to good use, and at the same time slowing down the pace of the intensity of travel and teaching and everything has been, it's been helpful.
It's interesting that this happened in the moment that we're forced not to travel, right?
Oh boy, that was a change. This is the first summer I've been in Texas now, here in Denton. This is 26 years. It's the first summer I ever spent the entire summer here. I was a little worried about that because it's really hot, and but stay inside. You know how it is. And but I made it through. And,
Great. And some Antonio Arzola is saying hi, and Bob Kurtz also. Hey Bob, long time. it's nice when I have bass guests, so all the bass friends start joining. It's good.
Who is that from? I'm sorry.
What?
Who is that from?
Arzola is from Rio.
Oh, hi. How are you?
Arzola and Bob Kurtz from the.
Oh, from Washington D.C. Huh?
Yeah, it's good. It's good to see people here. And how did you do with the summer camp, the base summer camp this year? Did you have something?
Yeah, we did. It was the 33rd year in a row, 33 years I've been doing the summer camp. So to not have that week of chaos and absolute full speed ahead energy was quite different. But we did it online, and we were able to do some technique classes and find ways to make that effective, as well as solo classes, chamber music, where they contributed to a mass-based piece. Mm-hmm. And some theory and gosh, what else did we do? We tried to make it as best we could. Obviously, you can't go all day long.
Especially with the little kids, it's hard to keep them.
Yeah, so we didn't gear it so much to the young ones this year, mainly the intermediate and the advanced students, because they can work a little more independently. Mm. But, there's one good thing about that. I did the same thing with my elite soloist program, Paracetal Strings sponsors every year, where I just take 5 students from around the world to study it very intensively for a week. We did it remotely too. We had one in Singapore, one in Taiwan, one in St. Petersburg, Russia, one in Colombia, and one in the US. And so the good thing about that is you can reach people in places where normally they don't have the money to pay for the flights and travel and all that. It's not as effective as if you're in person to person. There's no question about that. Online teaching of an instrument is not the way of the future. It could be a supplement, though, where people have more chance, more exposure to more people, but not. It's not the best pedagogy. You have to be able to touch the bow. You have to be able to just demonstrate and things like that.
Yeah. And how is the UNT these days? Like you guys in your remote class, did you cancel the semester? How did you go your spring?
We started back 5 weeks ago to the fall semester, and in music, especially applied lessons, most professors are teaching in person. But we had to do it in spaces that were bigger. My studio, for instance, that wasn't big enough, so I'm sharing a studio that is much longer. We all wear masks all the time. We desanitize the music stand after every single lesson. We have the cleanest music stands in the world. And then we've also put a break between every lesson, which is really interesting because normally I go boom, 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 5 in a row. And then by the end, you're kind of exhausted, but you've been in the energy the whole time. Here now we do a lesson and we have to have a 20 or 30-minute break to let the air clear out of the room. And then you go on with your next lesson. So now all of a sudden you have built-in breaks, which is healthy for the individual, for the teacher and everything, but it's not terribly time efficient. So it's slowed the pace of life down, which for me as I get older, I find that's a good thing. But what I've really noticed about the students in particular is they are thrilled to be back. We went through this for 2 months in the spring and then all summer long without being able to music festival lessons and all that type of stuff. And now they're back. They're very serious, very intent, working really hard. And they too aren't quite so busy because there's not so many things to run to for every hour. There's not no gigs yet either. But at least the learning is, I think, much more valuable now that we're back in. But some schools in the U.S. have gone totally virtual for the entire semester. Yeah. A lot of our history and theory, the academic classes are fairly remote for most subjects in the rest of the university.
Yeah, I was talking to John Schimmick the other day, and he said the Oklahoma City U is doing this. They prepared the studios with a plastic division uh, between the professor and the student,
I know
and
the wind people are doing that, and the singers, because there's so much more air coming
Mhm.
out that can spread very easily. Uh, for me, I'm a good 10, 12 feet at least apart, and feel pretty good that way. So far, so good.
Yeah. Well, we just kind of hoping that this second round, no second contamination around doesn't get as bad, but it seems like it's gonna get bad again.
Yeah, I know. It's hard to know. I mean, logic tells you if you put more people in a smaller space, there's going to be more spread. But our university here in particular has been, boy, if anybody comes down with it immediately, the tracing of the people that they've been near are all quarantined immediately.
Mhm.
And we've had very little outbreak on the campus compared to many other campuses that are.
Wow, that's good to know. Yeah. And uh, would you mind telling me a little bit about the foundation? How is it going these days? It's been a long time.
Well, we've had two major competitions, and the winner of our second competition is Dominic Wagner. It's
Mhm.
Wagner, just like the famous Richard Wagner composer, not of the same lineage, but the same spelling. And if you haven't heard him play, you really need to look him up on YouTube.
What's his face again?
Dominic Wagner, as
Okay.
in the composer, Dominic Wagner. And part of his prize was we had him here to record, before COVID, to record a number of pieces that were put on YouTube. And it's just really stellar. It's the cutting edge of quality for our instrument at this time by a young person. And I'm really thrilled to have him as the winner and that we can help promote his career. And then the other big element of the prize for the competition is a New York debut concert in Carnegie Recital Hall, Weill Hall, Carnegie Hall. And it was scheduled for December. You have to book a year and a half in advance. And then a few months ago, they announced that all concerts for the fall were canceled. And now we have to go back to the drawing board. They don't know when they're going to open for concerts again, and we'll have to reschedule and put it down. So that major uh, event, we have to postpone it, just too bad. But once that happens, we'll be ready for the next competition.
Mhm. Oh. You know, and it seems like everything that is being planned for 2021, it's planned to be 100% online because we
Yeah,
have.
a lot of people are just assuming this is going to keep going for a while, which seems to be the case. But
But
it certainly, as I'm sure, I mean, look at what we're doing right now. This is an outbreak of coronavirus, and it takes very creative minds like yours and with a vision for what's needed and what's possible. And that's what's pushed our profession forward through our base conventions and now conferences all over the world, and of course these major competitions and things like that.
mm,
And so I think we're seeing some good come from it. People are having to be extremely creative to get their performance there. But
well, I was surprised with the international online based summit. Like it was a lot bigger than I thought.
yeah, a lot
Uh,
of people tuned in.
yeah, it was great and it worked fine. I guess. I mean, with it got me inspired to do my thing here last week because
Oh, great.
I thought, wow, it's possible. And
But when you
although,
go, but you know as well as I, when you go to the say the ISD conventions, people go there for the camaraderie and talking and being in person with all these
yeah,
from our profession. And so I don't think anything will ever substitute for that, but it doesn't mean we have to stop.
yeah, I guess being talking about that very much, I think, very frequently these days. It seems like we're gonna get used to have both. To as soon as we can travel, we're gonna travel
Yeah.
and be together. But lots of a few ISPs, for example, that I missed. If I had the opportunity of being there online, I would be.
Mm.
You know, the past years, I think. My first one was 1993,
Yeah.
a lot,
Yeah.
and um, I guess since then I missed maybe three or four, but and I was available, I just didn't couldn't afford traveling
I know it's far, it's very expensive.
at the time. So I guess we're gonna have to live with both. That's what Hans started thinking about. I was talking to him also last month or something. He was saying that the plan is to get presential meeting, but they're kind of getting prepared for having everybody online.
Online. Yeah, I mean, you have to kind of prepare both and just see where life takes us.
See what's going on. Yeah, I don't know. Are you planning to be
Not sure yet myself, actually.
there? You've been to too many, huh? But it's still nice to meet, to hang.
It is. It's important, and the young people get to see some of the legends in person and hear them play. And I always enjoy the recitals so much because for me, it's the new music that people present, the new repertoire, either through transcriptions of traditional repertoire or very modern, cutting edge music.
I have to admit that for me, it's been easier and easier to choose one thing out of so many things happening. Because I remember 10 or 15 years ago, I would go crazy trying to see everything.
Some of
Now,
yeah,
I think it's part of getting old also.
I want to say that's what you're saying.
You don't know that because you're a kid, but as you're getting older, it's like, I'd rather sit and watch one full recital than being 10 minutes in each room
Mhm. Yeah.
trying to see everyone.
Sure.
So I kind of pick one thing and say, sorry, I can't see the other.
It's,
And
it's just the nature, you know. So many people want to present, you want to give them the opportunity, but uh,
yeah, it's nice to have all those options, but sometimes it's just good to sit outside. It's always summer, to chat with a person that you don't meet in 2 or 4 years, and put that all conversation up to date. It's worth it too.
well, I don't know if you and the other people who are listening know, but I started the ISB conventions back in 1984 in Chicago. And the purpose was back then is our profession needed to talk to each other. We needed to share ideas. How they did it in France is totally different than here in Asia and South America and so forth. So that was my real vision with it, was to bring people together. So we hear from a lot of people, but when you hear from a lot of people, you can only get a minimum amount.
Mhm.
So we have to combine that with the workshops. Like that's where I started my summer workshops, because then students can come and work very intensely with one person. And that's, of course, really valuable too. The two have very different agendas, and they reach people in two ways that people need. One is the more broad convention, and the other is the very specific direct training to themselves. So, and what you've seen since then in the 80s is just more and more conferences popping up, and countries holding their own conventions in their countries, and of course, many more base workshops and summer camps and things like that. When I started these things back in the 80s, there was literally nothing.
Yeah.
At least in my country, and anything that I knew of in Europe just literally didn't exist. And of course, we didn't have the internet, so it was very kind of self-contained, non-heterogeneous approach to our instrument.
And imagine that you probably have this special feeling seeing how big ISB became.
Yeah, I mean,
Start-
it just proves that it meets a real need of the people, a want, a need, a necessity, a luxury, and so I think it'll self-perpetuate for many years.
Yeah. And it proved to be an important thing because even with all the national societies and all these international conventions, ISB is bigger and bigger every time.
Yeah.
So it's certainly, a well done job. Thank you for doing, for what you work, because I know how hard it is to put a society together out of nothing.
Yeah, again, people want it, they need it as a profession, and I think, again, it has a motor that will keep it going. And what I've really enjoyed seeing is some of the other instruments, not just string instruments. Of course, you'll never have a convention of violin players, so forget it. But the violas meet all the time, international conventions. In fact, there's often one in Brazil. And cellos meet, I think, every other year also. And then you see now outbreaks since that time of the winds as well.
Yeah, you have
clarinets, the double reeds, the trumpets, the French horns meet every year.
Yeah.
And so it's fun and it's important.
The one thing I wanted to bring up with you is that when you're working on your book, you covered a lot of things that we see in different books, and it was only in one unit. But it's over 10 years now. Yeah, it was 2009.
Yeah, 2009, very good memory.
Yeah. And then it's during this last 11 years, so many other books came out and the others they had before that sometimes I think students are kind of lost with so much material going on. So how you feel about that? How of course you teach using your material, but what would you say to students like that has so many things available these days? And
Well,
a lot of people don't have a teacher, a regular teacher, and they have access to all this material. How will you advise these people to organize themselves?
that's a great question, because the going thought is that you should learn as much as you can from as many people as possible. I would put a caveat on that to when the student is ready. Because if you're, say, a beginning student, and this guy says, hold the bow like this, and this guy says, no, you got to put your thumb over the top of the stick, and this guy says, no, it has to be like this. The student has no way of knowing what's best or what works best for them. And so it can be very confusing. And if one guy plays standing up, the other guy plays sitting down, and the student says, oh, I like his playing. I mean, it becomes arbitrary, and it becomes overwhelming. The best solution I've ever seen is for the student, and the student can't necessarily determine this, it has to be available to them, but the best private teacher that they can, someone that really understands how the instrument works, how the body works, and what the music demands. So you've got this trifecta that we have to get. Usually with the younger students, it's gotten a lot better over the last 30, 40 years of my career. Much better. I mean, we have very good teachers on the beginning level now. But if one of those areas or two of those three areas are neglected, then the student grows up, in essence, handicapped because they don't have that area. But if the teacher is trying to teach something specific to the student, and the student goes over there and the other guy says, no, do it totally different, then the teacher is undercut, and their authority is undercut, and what they're trying to teach becomes moot, and therefore the student doesn't really gain anything. So what I like to do with my students is, of course, they study intensely with me during the year, and then in the summers I push them out. I say, no, nobody's taking lessons. You go to these music festivals, and then they hear from other students, they hear from other teachers, they realize that, where they stand maybe in the pecking order, how much more work they need to do. I find that to be really healthy. But I think the most important thing is to have that strong home base. That's the most important thing. And then you can add diversity and options to that. But it's like music. In music, you have a theme and then the variations. Mm-hmm. Who would write the variation first? And then at the end of the piece, they write the theme. Maybe some composers done that, but no, you start with the theme. How does the bow work? The hair on the string. How does the body work with flexibility, or when you don't want so much flexibility? And those are the essence, the fundamentals of playing that need to be instilled at the early stage. It always bothers me, though I run around a couple competitions for the highest level, when I see some of the younger competitions, for the, say 15 to 18-year-olds and the under 14 and under at ISB, and there's a young player there playing a piece that's 10 times too hard for them. That they have no, I mean, it's like Bach. We require Bach in almost everything these days, and yet for a young person to even technically be able to play most Bach is highly unusual. They usually don't have, it takes advanced left hand especially, advanced musical understanding to really play the Bach. And so you have students working on something that they're not ready to do. It's like orchestra excerpts, for instance. If you can't play spiccato, why are you working on this excerpt that requires spiccato? It's better pedagogically as a teacher to take the issue away from the music, spiccato, and you work on one note, and then you work on going across the string with those couple notes, and then you do a whole scale before you start playing difficult repertoire. And there's reasons for that we don't need to get into today, but that's, to me, a much healthier method of teaching and learning than throwing music that's too hard for the student. And speaking of my book, I appreciate you mentioning it. It's called Double Bass, The Ultimate Challenge. And there's a long story behind the title. But since it came out in hardback, we've now come out on ebook with it in English, Spanish, and Mandarin, Chinese.
Mandarin.
Sorry, we don't have it in Portuguese, but we have it in those three languages. And
both Brazilian, lots of Brazilians read in English, so
yeah, it works well that way. But there's such a large Spanish-speaking community in the world that in a lot of countries, in a lot of places, their training is not as far along, so this really makes it accessible. Same thing in China. We have some great players coming out of China, but the overall sense of pedagogy and how it works is not that terribly widespread. So those are the reasons that the book went those two languages first. But there's plans to go Italian, Russian, I think German and French as well, although I don't find that as necessary. Yeah, and then I did a whole series of 100 or more videos of the book, demonstrating everything I'm talking about in the book.
I saw some of them. Yeah,
those were sent out around with teasers, and all of that's available through miabase.org. That's MIA for Miami, Miami International Academy of Bass, miabase.org. All of those are available.
Miabase?
Miabase, yeah, MIA, which is the initials for Miami, where it's located.
Yeah.
And then
Miabase.org?
.org.
Okay.
Organization, org.
Okay, great. And one last thing I wanted to ask you today, it's the, recently I'm having the experience of finally have another bass teacher in the university.
Oh,
I got a bass colleague on for the popular music area.
Fantastic.
And he plays both electric and acoustic bass. And I'm lucky because he's a very nice guy and is a big friend also, which couldn't be, but it is. And it's wonderful. And reminds me my experience in the US where it's very common that you have two professors in the university like you and Lynn Sinton working. And I was going to ask you, how do you see the cooperation between you two guys with the teaching the students?
Our school is very unique because we have quite a large jazz program. So every bass player that goes into the jazz program starts taking lessons on the classical side and study with my teaching assistants for 2 years, and they have to pass the barrier. So we really aren't teaching them classical. We're teaching them how to play the upright bass with the bow, and coordination, the mechanics, the method, the fundamentals, all that type of stuff. And then when they're done with that, they raise their level of playing the instrument, and then they go take lessons in jazz. All the while, they're taking their jazz history classes, their jazz theory, their orchestration, all the regular improvisation classes. So it's a unique combination there. And then a few years ago, we added Gudrun Russian to the faculty here as a second classical bass teacher and former student of mine, and we know her well. And so she and I are, we handle the classical side and share students and run the same solo class, technique class. We have all the students together there. So there's a lot of cross breeding between the jazz and the classical. We also have a full-time jazz string player. He's a famous violinist, Tixier. And so the string players, my bass players, can take crossover jazz styles with the book. And then we also have a really big early music program where we have an actual professor who comes in and teaches cello and bass, early music Baroque style. We hold it in the bow, we have Baroque bows, violones playing Baroque music in
that's great.
authentic style. So it's real comprehensive, and it's an amalgamation of all the things that are open to the bass now in our profession, which is great. It's not just this, it's not just that. It incorporates, jazz, classical, Baroque, solo playing, chamber music, orchestral, opera. Everything is and it's important that way because just because of jobs and opportunity.
Yeah, it's wonderful. Wow, it's good to know. I'm hoping we're gonna begin next year, to have openings for popular players because it's gonna be first entry. It's gonna be next January or March. He was just hired 2 months ago in the middle of the quarantine and stuff. So we're working some extension programs and some stuff together. But yeah, we're gonna, you and your program with Lynn, it's gonna be a good inspiration for us.
Good. Yeah, feel free to discuss anytime.
Well, Jeff, it was great chatting with you, and hearing some of you and the foundation and all your teaching. I always learned a lot. You know, every time I meet you, every time I see you playing, and just thank you for your time.
My pleasure. Great to see you again and talk with you, and hello to everybody who's listening.
Yeah, there's other people here. Ronnie Oliveira, which says that you gave him 2 LPs in 2012 in Curitiba. Juan Preciado, Humberto Alessandro, and Alexandre Ritter from the south of Brazil. And, bass players around saying hi. And I thank you very much and hope we can meet in person sometime soon.
I hope so. Keep up the good work. This is fabulous what you're doing, and I know your listeners obviously get a lot out of it. So thanks for inviting me.
Oh, you're very welcome. I'm gonna finish the sequence on Live 200, and that's gonna be October the 7th on a Wednesday. And I'm gonna have an open Zoom meeting that day. I'm gonna send out the link, and everyone that wants to is welcome to get in and make a little thing, talk or play or just say hi.
Great.
So we can register this 200 meeting sessions in one big meeting on October 7th. I'm gonna send you the information if you want to join us.
I'll look forward to it. Great. Wow. Fantastic, Sonia. Keep up the great work.
Thank you so much. See ya.
Bye-bye.
Bye, people.
Bye, everybody.
Stay home. Bye.